Hi, I've wanted to do a video for some time now, and finally decided today is the day. I want to share my near-death experience with people, and hopefully it will help anybody that's been through a traumatic experience and has PTSD and is living with PTSD every day of their lives. Um, and I just wanted to share my story, and in hopes of we'll see where it goes because I'm just winging it. In May, just for a little background, in May of 2008, uh, I've been a commercial pilot for almost 20 years. I have almost 5,000 hours of flight time. The majority of that is pilot and command time. I've flown everything from Cessnas up to um, Beech 1900D airliners and King Airs, Navajos, etc. I had taken a job in the spring of 2008 as a chief pilot for an operator in northern Canada who had a number of float planes. This particular day, I picked up a Dehavilland DHC-2 Beaver aircraft on floats from the airport and flew it to our lodge on an eventful flight, beautiful flight. And there were 8 American tourists waiting to depart to their outposts that day to the fishing lodges. Transport Canada requirements state that I needed to do 5 takeoffs and landings solo um, to become current back on the aircraft again. So I decided to do those 5 circuits expeditiously, and I taxied to take off on my first of 5 touch and goes. About 350 feet, I had a catastrophic engine failure. Um, my first reaction, of course, was panic. My training kicked in. I tried everything that I knew to restart the engine. There's a manual fuel pump in a Beaver called a wobble pump. I tried using that. I tried even shooting raw fuel from my primer into the cylinders. Nothing would. I couldn't get the engine to fire. Um, I set my glide at 102 miles an hour, and at that point, I'd lost probably at least 100 feet of altitude and doing what we call the impossible turn at 250 feet was just not something I knew for sure if I tried that I would be dead. Uh, but the only other option was to continue flying forward, and I had spring hardwood trees and rocks looking me in the face. So my panic somehow though went from panic to almost a peaceful feeling came over me. Certainly an acceptance that this was how I was going to die. And I'm not saying I liked it, but it was still a peaceful feeling. And I remember distinctly the whistling of the wind around the fuselage and no other real sounds. My last memory was I thought I'd try my best to stall the aircraft, slow my airspeed, my forward momentum down as much as possible. I purposely stalled the aircraft just as it was about to, pulled back on the yoke, left wing dropped, and I remember it hitting a tree, and then everything kind of went into slow motion, and I can literally remember the wing wrapping around the tree and watching it start to crinkle and watching the wing fold around the tree, and then of course it tore off. And as I watched the wing tear off the airplane, I hit my head at that point, and I was a passenger for the rest of the flight. Crashed down through a bunch of trees, ended up on the edge of a bog that I was hoping that maybe I could get closer to the bog and have some sort of chance of doing a controlled crash landing in there, but didn't make it. And I woke up. I woke up, and this is where my near-death experience begins. I woke up in the cockpit, and the captain's seat had been derailed. It had broken away from the floor rails and was sitting upside down. And I looked at the seat, and I was sitting somehow just behind the captain's seat, but in between the captain and the co-pilot seat. And I started to check my body over, and I looked at my left arm, and my left arm was broken. I broke 22 bones in this plane crash. My right eye was popped out. You can probably see that in my video. I have several scars on my head, many up in my head as well. I had blood pouring down, but both my legs, I had a pretty serious injury in my right leg, but it worked. I could walk. My left leg was uninjured, and my right arm was uninjured. Um, my first thought at that point is I better exit the aircraft. I kind of must have been in shock because I remember laughing and couldn't believe that I was alive after this plane crash. um, in a stranger twist of fate, a beaver is 30 some odd feet. Well, I don't know the exact dimensions, but from tail to nose is 30 odd some feet long. And I looked sitting right beside me from the tail of the aircraft, which was sitting on an 80-degree angle, nose first, 8 feet dug down into this bog, nose of the aircraft, and the whole engine was down. All the cockpit was level with the ground, the cockpit window, and with the tail up in the air like this. Uh, I picked up this roll of paper towels that somehow ended up right beside me and started dabbing my head and getting the blood off of me. And as I said, I decided I needed to exit the aircraft as quick as possible. As easy as I could get up and walk into the kitchen from here, I got up and I exited the aircraft through the co-pilot's door. Yeah, I remember the co-pilot's door was wide open. So I walked right out through the door, and I walked to the front of the aircraft, dabbing my head all the way along with these paper towels, and I went and sat at the edge of the tree line, right where this little marshy bog was, and I looked back at the aircraft, and as I said, the cockpit was pretty much level with the ground, and I'm sitting now, and I look into the cockpit, and I see a right arm and a right leg dangling from the captain's seat that was hanging upside down. And at that very moment, I realized that was me. And my exact words, I looked up in the sky, which was very blue. There wasn't a cloud in the sky anywhere. There wasn't a sound. And I was in the bush in northern Ontario, but you'd expect something, birds or something. There was not a whisper of wind or sound. Just a beautiful, magnificent blue sky. And I looked back at the cockpit and I said, "Fuck, I'm dead." And I looked back up again, and that was it. I was out. Um, I woke up 5 days later in surgical. I'm sorry, 4 days later in surgical intensive care in the hospital in northern Ontario. I'd been transported from a small northern hospital to a larger metro area hospital in the north, and I woke up to my family. My wife, my children were there, and they were kind of surprised to see me, and I, of course, wasn't sure where I was or what, but I did remember that I had a plane crash, and I had a very solid memory of it at that point too. Um, so, long story short, to get to the interesting part of this story, uh, two inspectors from Transport Canada came in to see me in the hospital. I had one surgery to set my arm, and then I was going to require a second surgery on my arm. My elbow was sitting upside down. My left arm's a big mess. I have very limited use of it. That's all I can do with it is move it up and down. I have no elbow. It's held together with um, 16 screws and 4 long rods and 2 pins, and that's my left arm now. And I still have one more surgery to go. But anyways, these two Transport Canada inspectors come in and asked if I could, give them some particulars of what happened. So I told them the story that I basically just told you. Um, One of the inspectors had a tear in his eye, and he said, "Jeff, can you just hang on a minute? I want to introduce you to someone." So they go out of the room, come back in a minute, and they've got this helicopter pilot with them that saved my life, that found me, and and was the first one to answer my ELT and find me. And they asked me, would I mind sharing my story with them again? So I shared the story again, and the helicopter pilot starts to cry. And I go, what's the problem here? And he goes, "Jeff, you weren't out of the aircraft. I cut you out of the aircraft. You were in your seat, hanging upside down unconscious when I found you." And the stranger part is, they continued to ask me, was I sure there was nobody else with me during the crash? And I said, I'm 100% sure. There wasn't, because I just picked the aircraft up and I had a clear memory that there was nobody in the aircraft with me. And they said, well, Jeff, we found 54 blood-soaked paper towels strewn around the front and all out, kind of a trail to where the tree line starts, of blood-soaked paper towels, and we have no idea how they got there. And you just told us your story. So, anyways, doctors, I sat in front of a medical review board. The doctors came to the conclusion that what I had was called a bilocation experience. That's where you basically, it happens to small children that are in abusive homes when they're being beaten by their parents or whatever. They leave their body and they tell stories later in life. They remember being this little child. Uh, they remember being this little child being beaten, and they remember watching it, but feeling no pain because they had actually dislocated themselves from the situation. So somehow, some way, I experienced something on the other side. I know that there is life after death. There is no question in my mind about that. Um, the surgical team at the hospital I was at had phoned my family because I had a very bad head injury on top. My skull was crushed. My right eye was broken. My orbital in 3 places. My cheekbone in 5 places. All my teeth were knocked out on the right upper side of my mouth. Um, and as you can see, my eye sits crooked and funny now. So my family was surprised that I made it through this. I was surprised. The medical profession is surprised, and nobody can give me an answer how those blood-soaked paper towels got outside of the aircraft. But in any case, I just wanted to share my story with people and assure you that for those people that haven't experienced a near-death thing like um, I have nothing to gain by making this video, but I absolutely give you my word that I experienced something on the other side. For a short period of time, I believe I was dead and I was seeing what was the beginning of, call it what you want, heaven or the other side. But death is nothing to fear, and if this helps somebody, leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks.